Coming up on Nebraska Stories, tracking Nebraska's most elusive wildlife. A young player finds maturity off the court. Inspiring change through skateboarding. The art of fashion illustration. And uncovering a long-held family secret.
The rolling grassland of western Nebraska is a vast and seemingly infinite space. Part of the western High Plains, the region is known for howling winds, large farms, and few humans. It's also where a species native to the High Plains is fighting for survival.
My name is Lucia Corral. I'm a student from University of Nebraska at Lincoln. I'm part of the Nebraska Cooperative Fish and Wildlife Research Unit.
Corral came to Nebraska on a Fulbright scholarship from Guatemala. She has her master's in wildlife ecology. For her doctorate, she's tracking down one of Nebraska's most elusive predators, the aptly named swift fox.
A swift fox is the smallest canid species in the northern Great Plains. It's a very small fox, the size of a cat, basically, a domestic cat. It's no taller than 12 inches, and it's about the size of a cat. It's really small. It's yellowish colored, yellowish, grayish, with more white in the belly and in the inner parts of the body.
A nocturnal creature, swift fox are considered an endangered species in Nebraska. Most of the historical evidence about them is anecdotal, and spotting one in the wild is rare. For the last year and a half, Corral has been trying to pinpoint where exactly swift fox are calling home. But since she's searching an area the size of West Virginia, Corral needed to develop a system to gather the necessary data. To do that, she and her research assistant, Alan Harrington, are using camera traps.
That has less pitch.
The cameras are motion-sensored cameras. They also have a heat sensor, thermal sensor on there. So any detection to set off the camera is going to be through motion or heat.
Camera locations are chosen based on a variety of factors, like the size of the property, the landscape, and land use. Existing structures close to game trails work best.
Swift foxes try to avoid tree lines, usually, and they move more in open areas, relatively flat areas with short grass, trying to avoid predators like coyotes.
In front of each camera, a stake is driven into the ground, and scent lures are set. In this case, skunk-scented petroleum jelly.
And what about the smell of skunk?
The smell of skunk, it's great. I actually really love it now. Initially you're kind of like, whoa, it hits you in the face, but once you greet it every day, it just really becomes a part of you.
Corral and Harrington have set up cameras at more than 1,250 locations in 24 counties, gathering hundreds of thousands of digital images. More than 25 species of mammals and several bird species have also been documented. Swift fox have been seen at 33 different locations.
But we have found foxes in the habitats that we know they are suitable habitat for the species. Short grasses, mixed grasses, open areas, flat areas, pastures with cows, cattle, overgrazed pastures, loamy, sandy soil, which is, it's good for them they live in them, so they also select for places with those kind of soils.
Corral says depending on its location, a swift fox den could impact future human developments as well.
So it's important to have the basic information to do any informed decision, to do any type of management or conservation. We need to have the basic information, where they are and why they are selecting those areas and how they move in the landscape and how they are doing in terms of population. So this is kind of the basic we need to know, how many and where. And that's why we are just starting with the distribution map, where we can find them.
Driving hundreds of miles a day, getting in and out of trucks, pounding skunk-scented steaks into the ground.
Place to put the steak. Looks good.
It's taxing work, but necessary.
They had been around, and we don't know much about them here in Nebraska in terms of distribution and abundance of the species. Perfect. But we need to know because it's one of those pieces in the puzzle that makes the ecosystem keep functioning. Does that answer the question?
There's someone that wants to have Jason's name on the back of their shirt.
I think Logan wanted like a connection to the team. I think he thought it was cool that he actually knew somebody that would be on the team.
I mean, he's always there after the games waiting for me with the shirt on, and he's usually the first person I say hi to. So he's always been there for me this year.
Jason Towery, then a senior small forward at Lincoln High, expected his maturing to happen on the court. In fact, it would happen off the court after he noticed his name on the back of a young boy's shirt.
I noticed him, I think, it was one of those beginning games. He was in the gym and I saw the shirt. So I kind of talked to him, and actually from there on, we just kind of stayed close since.
They began a friendship, and Jason has taken on a role that was absent from his life as a young man, as well as Logan's.
So my mom and I have had custody of Logan since he was about 6 months old. His father passed away, and then his mom she didn't make very good decisions. So my mom and I have been taking care of him.
It's really nice for me to see that he figured out how to be a male mentor without having someone in the household to show him.
I remember when I was his age, I looked up to older people too. And I mean, having somebody do the same thing to me, it's kind of unique.
Well, sometimes we play basketball, sometimes we go to the movies, and it's like having a big brother.
Here you go.
We decided we were going to go to his school and bring him basketball, and I had signed it, and I knew he'd like it. I just kind of wanted to do something that made him feel kind of special.
Logan was just over the moon because he thought it was so cool that Jason would at least take the time out and see him and meet his friends.
Jesse told me that there was gonna be a surprise, and I didn't know what it was, so he's just kind of surprised me. Since the last time I didn't even think it was true. That felt great.
Jason and Logan also began to share a journal back and forth as a way to keep their lines of communication open.
I believe we started that right after basketball season. I didn't see him for a little while, and I think the journal was just he had wrote me, asked me how everything was, and so from there on, we just kind of passed it back and forth.
In the notebook, he said that I was like a little brother to him that he never had. I felt like he was my big brother.
There you go. Shot's looking better.
I think Logan now wants to be a role model for other kids in this sense. You know, he sees what, it's like to have a good, male role model in his life.
I'm really pleased as a parent to see my son give back, to give back to the community and to give back as a mentor.
He's taught me that wherever I go, somebody has eyes on me. You hear that a lot, but you don't really notice it until it's actually happening.
When you think of a skateboarder, what do you think of? A hooligan? A troublemaker? Well, a movement that began in Lincoln, called Skate for Change, is changing not only the way skateboarders are seen by their communities, but more importantly, changing the lives of the homeless.
Skate for Change is an opportunity for those kids to prove people wrong. You know, it's great to see 40 skaters skating downtown and watch business owners wonder what's going on, and then those 40 kids stop at a street corner and give socks and a blanket to a homeless person. I mean, that's changing perspective, changing the way that people think about young skateboarders.
It's a lot more than skating around downtown.
I just believe that Skate for Change means helping the unfortunate and helping those that, you know, need our help.
It feels better to give than to receive.
Mike Smith's love for skateboarding began at a young age in Imperial, Nebraska, and it never left him.
We were just kind of had to create our own fun and come up with whatever we could do just to sort of stay out of trouble, and so we sort of did everything.
While playing college basketball at Grace University in Omaha, Mike developed a need to give back. He fulfilled that need through community outreach.
I started at Campus Life. I knew I wanted to work with youth. I didn't know to what capacity or how that was going to work out, but I've had a lot of great adults help me kind of make it in life, and so that was why I felt like I had an opportunity to turn around and do the same thing for a lot of young people in Lincoln and in Omaha.
Mike's passion for outreach and skateboarding were beginning to merge.
I got a phone call like 4 years ago there was a skate park here in Lincoln, and the executive director called me and was basically like, hey, our skate park's closing down. If you want our ramps, you can have them. And you know, he said, you got to keep them in Lincoln, do something positive for kids. And that was what got my mind going, that hey, maybe I can create something really cool in Lincoln involving, you know, skateboarding and potentially outreach or whatever.
When Mike moved to Lincoln, he brought skateboarding and outreach together.
Skate for Change completely just was kind of an accident. Every Tuesday I would skate around by myself and just hand out food and water and socks and hygiene kits and stuff to the homeless guys that were on street corners, and a buddy saw me, and it was just kind of me and him, and we'd skate around, and then a couple more, and then it just kind of kept growing, and then, you know, you'd show up on a Tuesday to go do Skate for Change, and there'd be like, you know, 40 people wanting to go and be a part of this. Kids would show up with their own socks and their own shirts and their own clothing to give it away. And it was when I started to see this, I started to realize these kids have a lot of power and a lot of potential to do something big.
Today, this Lincoln skate park, called the Bay, reflects growth not only in Mike's skateboarding passion, but growth in his mission to give back.
One day I was just skating at the Bay, and then some guys would tell me about it and saying, hey, let's go give some food and water and stuff to homeless people. And I said, that sounds like fun, and I just joined it. I just loved it ever since.
After Skate for Change exploded in Lincoln, chapters began to pop up all across the country and even into Canada.
We've grown to Detroit and to Seattle and Chicago and, you know, Kansas City, Denver. I mean, it's pretty crazy to see it, but because of the internet, kids will see what we're doing and realize that it's not hard. You know, this isn't a hard concept. It's pretty simple. You get stuff and you go give it away, and you just build relationships while you're doing it.
Relationships that those giving and those receiving will always remember.
2 years ago, it was a really warm Thanksgiving, and the day before Thanksgiving, our whole crew went down underneath the bridge and just kind of spent time with the guys, and one of the kids asked what they were doing for Thanksgiving, and all the guys just said, oh, we'll probably spend it right here. And when we skated off, the kid told me he wanted to have a Thanksgiving meal under the bridge with these guys and asked if we could help. And so everybody just started putting it out on their Facebook and their Twitter, and like 12 hours later, we had like 5 turkeys and mashed potatoes and food. I mean, the entire thing, and it was like 20-some skate kids and 40, 50, 60 homeless guys all came together under this bridge on Thanksgiving Day, and that was my wife and I's first Thanksgiving, and it was like a lot of these kids spent Thanksgiving Day down underneath this bridge with these guys, and I think that to me was probably one of the most special Skate for Change moments, was seeing, it was an idea, you know, a kid had, and watching that whole thing play out was pretty cool.
As the movement grows and moments like this are created nationwide, Mike hopes to quietly fade out of the spotlight.
I mean, I would love to see Skate for Change happen all over the world, and no one would need to know where it started or who I was or how they even got a part of a Skate for Change crew. It's just, that to me is the end game.
But as far as the Lincoln Skate for Change crew, they know exactly who to credit.
Mike Smith. He helped me a lot with it, and I don't know, he's just a great guy.
I've had a different outlook on like people downtown.
Through Skate for Change, I've learned to be more thankful for things and not take many things for granted. Because a lot of those people are just like, it's surprising to see how happy they are when they just really have almost nothing. You know, this is really inspiring.
So maybe now you'll want to ask yourself again, when you think of a skateboarder, what do you think of?
Yeah, they won't quit.
All right, boys, thank you. And the beautiful lady. We don't forget.
Guys, come back. We're glad to see you guys come down here. God bless you all.
In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, ads like these filled the newspapers and magazines of the day, driving consumers to purchase the latest designer shoes or clothing. It was the way retailers lured shoppers into the stores. And Omaha fashion illustrator Mary Mitchell was the hand behind those alluring sketches.
I had about 15 retailers calling me and doing their ads, and they would appear also in the Lincoln Journal, plus the local magazines here.
Retailers would drop off a garment at her studio for her to create a rendering. Mary drew the clothing consumers wanted to wear, with the faces of people we might want to be.
If you're picking up a newspaper and you see an illustration in comparison to a photograph, you sort of put yourself more into the illustration because you're seeing a photograph of a person. Whereas the illustration, you'll think, well, maybe I would look pretty good in that dress.
While fashion photography could show every detail, fashion illustration was much more about highlighting select details.
In fashion illustrations, the artist shows you what she feels about this outfit. And she may do a little bit more pizzazz or oomph or more detail. Like for instance, if there was embroidery design, you would see that better rather than a photograph.
While these sketches were designed to sell clothes, they also contain a high level of artistry.
It's a true art of manipulating the eye. As an illustrator, you're trying to move the eye through the composition, just like an artist is trying to move the eye through the composition. Starting at the left, probably the rendering or the garments at the left, then maybe some more detail at the right, and the text at the right. Mary's late illustrations, she takes some creative license and becomes both interpreter and a bit designer, I think. You could almost name the fur, like you could name that it was chinchilla, or you could name that it was mink. And that was her talent of the detail and the depth that she could get with just using her 935 pencil in black and white, and she could get all that detail, which I think is remarkable.
And these drawings were something Mary simply couldn't part with.
It was a crime to throw them away. It was a lot of work, a lot of hours put in those. So I kept him in my studio downstairs in a drawer. I put so many hours and time and work into this, and I didn't want to throw him out. I think it is art. It really is.
With more than 1,000 renderings spanning 3 decades, industry experts say this collection is an important one.
It's significant for the breadth of her work, and that this work occurred in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s when illustration was in the mainstream of fashion marketing. Mary's wonderful approach to interpreting designs. There's depth, there's fluidity, there's movement, and there's energy, which not every illustrator can master, and she mastered that.
While the retail world relies on fashion photography to sell clothes these days, Mary isn't ready to put down her brushes just yet.
It's expressive. It gives me something to do that I enjoy. It's like reading a book, and if you enjoy reading a book, I enjoy drawing. It's a pleasure, and it's just a joy to sit there and draw something like this and think, oh, I wish I could wear that.
Don't we all?
I began to work on this book when I learned that my cousins did not know the exploits of the Eyman boys during World War II. I started by interviewing my uncles, aunts, and cousins to gather the story. And I came to realize it was really a story about the Dust Bowl.
You kind of even hate to talk about it, but it's been so long, it don't bother me now. But it was terrible.
I remember the hot southwest winds just wilting everything every year.
The wind and the sand actually would cut that corn off, or else it would bury the corn with the sand. My father was so discouraged, I never saw him cry until after one of those storms.
I learned so much about what it was like on this farm in Oakdale, Nebraska. But more importantly than that, it was a journey to discover who my grandfather was. Because as children, we never mentioned his name.
He farmed the place there where we lived, but he worked for George Hunter across the fence there.
He was a man who had a dream. He wanted a farm. He wanted to support this family of 12 in the best way he could. My grandmother was a very loving person. And where Chris was the strict disciplinarian, she provided that little extra ounce of love and nurturing and caring.
We were all very close. I remember there were 10 of us in that house, and I don't know where we all slept, but we did, you know. It was upstairs somewhere.
Chris was a hard worker. I can remember him going out to milk the cows and things when I was there.
And then the Dust Bowl hit. The grasshoppers were the devastation to the crops.
They ate everything, you know. They just cleaned everything.
They were big boogers. And when they flew up and lit on you, they could bite you, they'd pinch you, you could feel it.
They'd poison them, but you know, it just kept coming.
They tried to grow crops every year, but it was so dry. When things were at their worst is when Hattie seemed to be at her best. Her dream changed from how am I going to educate these children and get them to the best life I can possibly give them, to how am I going to feed and clothe and keep these kids alive.
You wonder how she was able to, but she baked bread and she canned a lot of vegetables and that type of thing.
They had always raised chickens and hens. She raised more.
We milked cows, so we had cream, and we'd take that to the store on Saturday night and trade the cream and the eggs for groceries. My dad worked for the government, building roads, and just for a few bucks so he could buy something to eat, you know.
All those dreams he had of owning his farm someday, those dreams were devastated. There was no way that was ever going to happen. They knew that he was in a decline.
He kind of held back. He wasn't too interested maybe in getting out.
Hattie was always watching for him. When he was in a black mood, she would tell the boys, watch your dad.
The Eyman family was the only family in Antelope County that had 4 boys in the service at the same time.
4 brothers was in the war, and I tell you, just
It was tough on you.
got to him. Yeah.
There were times he would go in the cellar and he just wanted to be alone.
He was just having kind of a nervous breakdown over it all.
Hattie began to speak in a worried voice. Turk, Dad did not come in for dinner today, and I'm worried. I have a bad feeling this time. They lifted the lifeless body of their father. He was light as a feather as the boys carried him from the barn up to the house. Turk said, "He's gone, and he's never to be mentioned again." And with that, the door was closed on a secret that would not be revealed for nearly 65 years.
The difficult things are hard to talk about, but through the book, we were able to talk about those difficult times, and I think it really helped us all work through them.
But other than that, I'm proud of my folks.
Yeah.
I think that my grandfather and my grandmother would be so proud of their 10 children.
The whole family done well, and I know the folks would appreciate that very much.
And I think he would see himself in those children. I find the Oakdale Cemetery hauntingly beautiful when I think about the people and the sacrifice. And I can walk up there and look over the graves, and I know this is my family. This is where I came from.
I value their history, I value their legacy, and I have a lot of peace coming here. A lot of peace.
Watch our stories online at netnebraska.org/Nebraska Stories, and go to Facebook to like us and leave a comment. Join the Nebraska Stories conversation. Nebraska Stories is funded by the Margaret and Martha Thomas Foundation, the Nebraska Office of Highway Safety, Humanities Nebraska, the Nebraska Tourism Commission, and First Nebraska Bank. Sustained funding for arts coverage is provided by the H. Lee and Carol Gendler Charitable Fund, the Nebraska Arts Council, and Nebraska Cultural Endowment.